Hi, this is Marsha.
And this is Kelly.
We are the 2Us of 2Us Fiber Adventures. Thanks for stopping by.
You'll hear about knitting, spinning, dyeing, crocheting, and just about anything else we can think of as a way to play with string.
We blog and post show notes at 2usfiberadventures.com.
And we invite you to join our 2Us Fiber Adventures group on Ravelry. I'm 100 Projects.
And I am Better in Motion.
We're both on Instagram and Ravelry, and we look forward to meeting you there.
Enjoy the episode.
Hi, everyone. This episode is a little different than usual, so if you're just here for the yarn talk, you may want to skip this episode. We recorded on Thursday, and I'm adding this comment on Sunday after editing. At the time we recorded, we were a little hesitant to speak about politics, but had decided to do so in the context of the marches that we had attended and our own personal goals for 2017. This weekend, with the executive order on immigration, creating fear and chaos in the lives of immigrants and their families, we are glad we took some time to talk about our beliefs. We hope you enjoy the show and that perhaps you are also inspired to take some action. Hello, Marsha.
Hi, Kelly.
We have been pretty busy, haven't we?
We have been busy.
Yes. So this episode, we're going to do something a little different, and we're going to talk about the knitting first.
Yes, before we start talking about... Well, I am going to interrupt. What are you drinking?
Oh, Zinfandel. I have a glass of Zinfandel, okay. Yes. And it's the afternoon.
It's the afternoon, and so I'm having my bourbon. You can hear my eyes. Okay. All right.
Yeah.
So anyway, knitting. What are you knitting?
I am right now, at this moment, working on the poncho, my Om shawl. And
okay.
I have had it put away for quite a while, but I got it out today, and I've been working on it. I'm almost to the halfway point, if I measure it, because it's supposed to be 56 inches long, and I think I'm at about 23 inches. So I've got about 3 inches to go. So yeah, I think I'm on track to finish it if I get my act together and actually knit, and don't have to do any major unknitting like I was doing for a while.
Well, yeah, that hurts to have to do that.
Yes.
But
I love the way it's coming out. It's just, I love these grays.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, that's really pretty. And you like working with the yarn, too.
The yarn is really nice, yeah. The yarn is really nice. It's getting to the point where the project is kind of heavy now, though, which, you know, that's always a little harder. The yarn is kind of dense, and so it's about half done, but it's pretty heavy. But I'm enjoying it, and I really like the colors. And I have it now. I'm clicking away as we talk.
Yes, I'm clicking away because I am knitting on my Rodeo Drive poncho. And I have not been doing very much knitting, but I realized that Stitches West comes up the end of February, and we're just a few days away from the 1st of February.
Yes.
And I remember my goal was to try, well, not try, but if I say try, then that gives me an out. So
right.
My goal is to have it done for Stitches West, which is, remind me again, that is the
23rd is when it starts. That's a Thursday. Yeah. And then we'll be there the 25th and 26th. So It's a month away.
I know, but I started to and it's, I love this poncho, so what I'm about to say is not meant to be negative, but it's a lot of stockinette. I mean, all I'm doing is stockinette, and then when I have this big fat cable that goes down the front, so it's a lot of stockinette in between the interesting cable.
Yeah.
I'll be glad when it's done. But I am about, I would say, halfway through the second to the last ball. And the pattern says to reserve about 35 grams of yarn out for the border. And then that way you can use up all of your yarn minus the 35 grams to make the poncho as long as you want.
Okay.
So each ball of my yarn is 100 grams. So I figure I have to use this ball and then just about roughly 2/3.
Yeah.
Less than 2/3 of the last ball, and then I'll start the border.
What is the border? Do you know?
Okay, excuse me for one moment. I have to rustle paper because I don't remember. I think it's garter stitch, I think. But isn't that terrible? I can't even remember. I'm rustling.
Well, actually,
I'm sorry. This is not...
If it was me, I wouldn't be saying I didn't remember. I'd be saying, oh, I haven't read that far in the pattern.
Oh, I'm so honest. Okay, finishing. It is garter stitch. So it's because it's in the round. You'll knit a row, purl a row, knit a row, purl a row.
Okay.
But yeah. So and I think that's for how many rows do I do? 6 rounds.
Okay.
So 3 garter stitch ridges. So not very much. So I'm actually closer than I realize. But I just haven't been knitting very much.
Well, you're closer than I am.
Yeah. So Kelly, you cannot do anything between now and February, the end of February. Sorry, you can't go to school and teach.
I have to sit home and knit my knit on my poncho. Yeah, because I've got about half to go.
Well, I don't have a good excuse for not knitting. You have a good excuse for not knitting on your poncho because you were making pussy hats.
Oh my gosh, yes.
And you made a lot.
I made a lot of them. So I think I had started one, or maybe I had started some the last episode. I sent away a package to Washington, D.C. of 6 of them. I think maybe I mentioned this in the last episode. I sent my 6 and Aunt Betty's 4, and mine were made with the Lion Brand tonal in the fuchsia color, and it actually turned out to be a really nice yarn to knit with. I liked knitting with it a lot. So I sent those away, but then I started another batch of them because I was going to the march. My niece, I didn't know, maybe my other 2 nieces would be going. So I thought I would make 4 more hats for us to have for the march because we were going to go. And then while I was knitting those, it was great because we had 2 days. I think it was last week on Wednesday and Thursday. We had 2 days of in-service, or Tuesday and Wednesday. We had 2 days of in-service at school. And so I brought yarn in my bag. It was basically all I had in my bag was skeins of yarn because I knew I was going to get a lot done. And I think I made 2 hats each day.
Wow.
And while I was making them, well, they weren't sewn together or anything, but most of the knitting was done. I ran out of yarn, so I had my aunt get me some new yarn. So she ended up having to get raspberry because there was no more of the fuchsia anywhere in the city of Salinas. So anyway, while I was making them at school, someone saw them, and so she messaged me and said, oh, is there any way that I could pay you to make some hats? Because some friends and I are going to the march in Watsonville, and we'd love to have hats. So I said, oh, sure, I'll make hats. So she needed 4, and I said, I don't know if I can do 4. So anyway, I ended up doing 14 hats altogether, 6 that I sent to Washington, D.C., 4 for my own purposes, and 4 that I sent to my friend so that she could use them in the march in Watsonville. So yeah, 14
you were
pussy
busy.
Hats. My needles were clicking away as fast as possible.
I only made 1 for myself for the march here in Seattle, and I was lucky to get that one done. But Kelly, we need to talk about our experience in the march.
Oh my gosh, yes.
I have to say, I did not know what to expect. They were saying, well, I have to say when I signed, I registered for it. And the reason they did that is the organizers just kind of wanted to count to know what they needed for logistically what they needed. And so I registered and they said that were expecting 50,000 people. And then the day of the march, there's different estimates, but as we know in the news currently, there's lots of questions about estimating crowd size. They said that the news said there was anywhere from, I heard 100,000 all the way up to 175,000
wow.
people participated in the march in Seattle. The march started in Judkins Park, which is kind of the southeast corner of the city. Went through the International District, through Pioneer Square, downtown Seattle, up to the Seattle Center, which is about 4 miles, roughly.
Okay.
And the march there were so many people that when people were arriving at the Seattle Center, there are still people waiting to leave Judkins Park.
Oh my gosh!
So it stretched that whole 4 mile route. It was really, and I have to say, really didn't. I've never, I've lived a quiet life. I've never demonstrated, protested. I've never done anything like that in my life. And I
never been on strike.
I've never been on strike. You've had the strike. And this whole thing was so amazing to me that it was so fun. It was, and I would say people were calling it a protest. I really did not see it as a protest. It was more sort of a march of solidarity.
Right. It was for something rather than
it
against
was for something as opposed to against something. And it had an amazing positive vibe. There were men and women there, all different colors of people, all different orientations of people. There were men and women that had babies just a few weeks old in, those snugglies, all the way to older people in wheelchairs.
Yeah.
It was a hugely diverse group. It felt safe. It felt fun. Everybody was having a good time. It was the most positive experience I think I've had. And it reminded me, even though it was very different, what brought everybody together is very different. It had that same galvanizing effect that when the Seahawks won the Super Bowl.
Oh, yeah.
And they had the whole city at that time was on board for that team. And when they had the parade, businesses shut down, kids left school to go down for that parade. And the same thing, that congratulation parade for the Seahawks, it was sort of the same thing. There was businesses that closed, kids left school to go down and participate in it. Well, it actually was on Saturday. It was on Saturday. It was the protest on the inauguration day that kids left school. But I was really pleased to see how many high school age kids were there. And young men and women, 20s to 30s. That shows how old I am. But, that I'm sure on a Saturday off from school or work would rather be doing something else, but they were down there. And the signs were funny. And I'm sure you had the same experience in San Francisco.
Yeah.
Some of the signs that people were holding, there was not one angry sign, not one bitter sign, not one hateful sign.
Yeah.
All positive, all encouraging.
And also really varied.
Really varied.
The messages really varied of what people were for. The whole idea of intersectionality, that women's issues are all sort of intertwined.
Yeah, I think it was, isn't it Hillary Clinton's line or quote was, "Our women's rights are human rights." And I really had that sense, even though this was billed as a women's march,
right?
It was more than that. It was, everybody was down there because there's a lot of things people are concerned about that affect the entire population, regardless of if you're a man or a woman, young, old,
gay, straight,
race, whatever, all these different is. So it was really, really a great, and your experience too sounds like it was great too.
Yeah,
really.
It was fabulous. Let me just say one fabulous part of it was that Joan Baez was there singing at the very end. Oh my gosh, that was very cool. But no, it was the same way. The crowd was just really nice and supportive, and everybody was, taking pictures of each other and talking to each other, and they're friendly, and it just very positive. The whole vibe was just super hopeful and positive. It was great, very inspiring, very inspiring. Yeah. It did get me thinking about what I'm going to do afterwards, because it it's nice to celebrate that everybody can be peaceful and together and on the same page and for a lot of really good things. But the next day, you have to be willing to do things. If you have beliefs, you need to be able to do things to sort of back up what you believe.
Right.
And so that's kind of been what I've been thinking about since it was over.
Yeah. Yeah. I've been thinking the same thing too. So I'm trying to find ways to get involved. And I know you are too.
Yeah. Yeah. One of the things that I have found that I thought was really good is that the Women's March website now has on it their campaign. And the idea is that it's called 10 in 100. And so they're going to have 10 actions that people can take in the first 100 days of the presidential term to kind of take action on those things that they stood up to believe, stood up for and were for during the march. And so there's the first one, which is to send postcards to your senators and representatives in Congress. And so that's the first thing, is to let them know what you think. Let them know what you want to do. Be engaged in the political process. So that's the first one. And I've kind of made a commitment to do them. I don't know what they all are. So it's a little bit of an interesting commitment to myself, but I think it's good to have some action that I can take.
Yeah, you were kind enough to send a link to indivisibleguide.com. And so I printed that out, and I've been looking at that. And then there's also, on that website, you can find groups to become involved in. So I contacted one of the groups, and I was sort of laughing because I've not had Twitter, but the only way I could contact the group was through Twitter. And so I realize part of being involved is going to be educating myself on social media. So, I have Facebook and I have Instagram, but Twitter I've not been involved in. And I have to say, it's a bit mind-boggling to me. I can't. And so I'm now this group, they're sending their stuff being posted every day, several times a day. And there's so much. I don't really know where to even begin to digest all the information. So, I realize I have a little bit, it's going to be a learning curve for me in social media. But this is good. Yeah, it's always good to learn new things. I have to say about myself, because I've just been living my life the way I've been living my life. And I think perhaps I've become a bit complacent. So I think I'm trying to find some positive things about where we are right now. I think that the results of this election cycle has sort of revealed sort of a dark side to America. And which has been very disturbing to me. On both sides, the talk has been very dark and
sort of unkind. I think you mentioned earlier when we were talking a level of viciousness on both sides that's just really concerning.
Very concerning, yeah. And it's made me feel really sad, and it's contributed a lot to some of the sort of hysteria in we may talk about later, but sort of the hysteria in my brain. So the positive I'm going to say about this, though, is I think it has revealed something about the country, which is good because, things can only fester in the dark. And when things are brought to the light, then we can look at it honestly, and do some work on maybe making things better. But unless we're willing to actually acknowledge something, we can't work on it to make it better. And so this is what I'm trying to tell myself, is that in this period of time, it's a huge learning time for the country and for all of us to look at how we behave and how we are. Yeah. And is this really how we want to be?
Right. Yeah, I think that there are some aspects of human nature that they're visible everywhere, but I think they're sort of amplified by social media. And that's the willingness of people to be sort of vicious or mean to get a laugh or to get attention. And I think, I'm guilty of it. I've had to kind of look at myself, and I say I want to hear discussion about issues and not about personalities. But I'm quick to laugh at something that might be a personal attack if I think it's funny. And when you're sort of in the mode of reading and listening to that kind of stuff, then your own mind, or at least for me, my own mind starts to think up my own little nasty jokes that, that make me laugh, that it's like, oh, who can I share this with, to make them laugh too. And that's just, I've had time periods at work where things were unhappy, where I found myself being more and more mean to people. We referenced the strike earlier. That was one of those episodes. And I had to kind of get a hold on it. I had to look honestly at my behavior and say, well, look, is this really the kind of person that I want to be? And I think it is really easy to kind of fall into that. I believe strongly one thing, and so I'm going to make fun of the people who believe strongly something else, instead of just focusing on, we have a difference of opinion.
I speak about myself, though, in terms of about our rights, as citizens of this country. I think that I've been complacent, and I just taken it for granted that we have these rights and we're always going to have these rights. And that's not really the truth. The truth is we only have these rights because we all agree we have these rights.
Yes.
And it's just because it's on a paper doesn't make it happen. It's everybody agreeing that what's written on that paper is what we're gonna follow that rule. Some of those are sort of being questioned, and my entire life I thought it was just there. It was a given. We have this. So it's been interesting this last few months to realize I'm not particularly protected and safe. Things are possibly going to change, or for people who live around me, and not for the better necessarily. And it's time for us to, sometimes we can't be complacent.
Right.
And especially, where I live on the West Coast, we're doing well, we're almost doing too well economically here. Housing prices are astronomical. We have low unemployment. Amazon is on fire. More and more people are moving to the city. So I am kind of naive to think that that's the way it is around the country. So just sort of my own naivete about the rest of the country. I have to acknowledge that, and then also my complacency too. I'm doing well out here, so I can't understand why I should be worried about my rights.
Yeah. Well, and I think this idea of getting engaged in the political process is a really important one right now. When you have an election where neither candidate is particularly popular or having high approval ratings, you end up with people making a choice. And no matter whether you voted for the president or didn't, I think there are an awful lot of people, even who voted for the president, who weren't necessarily in agreement with everything. And if that's the case, they need to speak up. And if you didn't vote for the president, then you need to speak up. Because like you say, just kind of being complacent that, well, it doesn't matter. What I say doesn't matter. My voice doesn't matter. I don't think we can afford to say that anymore.
No, we can't.
So, yeah.
So I was, when I was talking about trying to find something positive, I think the positive, what I said earlier about, it's exposed sort of the dark side of America, which is positive because we have to look at that. I think the other positive thing is it's motivated people to be involved.
Yeah.
And that's the only way we can be successful as a country, and our government can be successful if we have people involved.
Right.
And so it started, I think I really felt that way from that march, that honestly, not everybody's going to do anything. I mean, not everybody's going to participate, but a whole bunch of people are motivated now. Mm-hmm. Way more people were motivated after that march than were motivated before that march, I would say. And it's true. A lot of people march that day and they're going to go home and just carry on and not do anything. But a lot of people, I think, are going to make pretty substantive change. They're going to sure make an effort.
Yeah.
And
well, just the sheer numbers. If you just think, if only a small percentage of people actually go home and take some actions, that's still a large number of people.
Yeah. The other thing about the march, too, of course, I'm marching on Saturday. Of course, I don't have any, I was just marching and enjoying the whole event, so I wasn't paying attention to the news. So I did not know. I knew there was marches taking place in cities, well, major cities across the United States. I did not know that there was marches in so many cities, including little tiny cities where 600 people were showing up. Someone posted a picture of the people in Antarctica were wearing their hats, and up in some little town in Alaska, and then all around the world, people were participating in this.
Yes.
And we will get back to knitting. Pussyhats everywhere.
Oh my gosh!
I was blown away by, and it was my understanding this Pussy Hat project started in one place, and I've forgotten the name of it. I don't even have my paperwork anymore. But that one yarn shop, someone designed that pattern, I think, is how this started. And those hats were everywhere.
They were everywhere. Every aerial photo I saw, the crowd was pink.
Yeah.
Yeah. And there were women in front of us in San Francisco who were giving away hats that they had made out of polar fleece, not knitted, but sewn. And so there was just, there was every kind of hat. Yeah,
there was lots of knit hats, crocheted hats, polar fleece hats.
Fake fur. I saw some fake fur pussy hats.
Fake fur. Some people just had on pink wigs. And then some people they just had gone through their closet and found, oh yeah, I got a pink hat, and they wore it, and but it was really pink hats on babies, pink hats on dogs. Yeah. It was just kind of amazing. Really, there's the pictures.
It was so cool to think of all those women and some men, but probably mostly women. All of those women with their needles clicking away, making all those hats that were in all those cities. The power of knitters is amazing.
The power of knitters. There are so many women and men knitting pussy hats that you could probably hear the clicking of the needles in outer space.
Probably so.
Aliens in another universe, or what's that sound?
Oh my goodness.
Oh my God. That's so funny. Yeah. So it really was, really just truly a fantastic event.
Yeah.
So inspirational.
It was very inspirational and empowering.
Yeah.
I felt like, yes, I do have a way to make some kind of difference.
And I will say too, I sit in I'm in my house, and I go out and I walk the dog, and I move through my life and everything, and I have my close friends that we have conversations, but to go down there and I'm not the only person. Look at all my friends here.
Right.
I have 175,000 like-minded
kindred
people.
Spirits,
that was kind of I'm not alone.
That was very nice.
Yeah.
Very nice. So let's segue from that into our kind of goals for the year, our ideas about what we want to do during the upcoming year. I sort of alluded to mine when I was discussing earlier about, that sort of meanness that I can have where I'm looking at something funny and making judgments, I guess, about things. And so what I decided is that I would like to have a little bit more generosity of spirit. And partly this came out of, thinking about the election and thinking about why people were voting the way they were voting, and realizing that, I have such strong beliefs that I would maybe overlook some things to vote my party. And so my making a judgment about why somebody's doing something is, it's just not the right way to go. And I'd like to be able to say, well, I don't know what's behind the decisions that people are making. I really don't know, right? You don't know. I mean, we talked about in our last podcast, one of the things that kept coming up was it's complicated. And basically that's true about people's lives, right? It's complicated. Why I believe the things I believe is complicated, and why other people believe what they believe is also equally as complicated. And so just recognizing that and being generous about that and giving people the benefit of the doubt. Yeah. It kind of reminds me when I was first spinning, I was on the spin list. There were people on that spin list, and you could tell from, the conversation, but there were people from that spin list who were every walk of life from, late 1960s hippies with a spinning wheel. I mean, this wasn't in the 60s, it was in the 90s, but, women who had started spinning as 1960s hippies, all the way to people who were living off the land so that they could be sort of totally off the grid and survive without any government at all. Everything and everything in the middle. And we all had the most wonderful and informative and just generous conversations about spinning and washing wool and carding wool, and just thinking about that was kind of one of the things that made me think about this as a goal for the year. And then the other thing that, just thinking about generosity, I also want to be more generous just more generous in general. When I had the job where I was working, not teaching, I was doing the grant job, I was really stingy with my time. I was at work a lot of hours, and I wasn't really enjoying myself. And so when I would be off on the weekends, I was super stingy with that time. And now I feel like, I really could be a lot more generous with my time. I don't need to be so protective of it. And so just this idea of generosity, more generous of spirit, more generous just with my time and myself and my energy and all of that. It's kind of my goal for this year.
It's funny, Kelly, when you say that, because I think of you as being a very generous person. So, but yes, I can see where you're coming from, especially I remember when you had that job.
Well, and I think I kind of had to think hard about whether I wanted to even say that on the podcast, because it kind of makes me sound like I think I'm an awful person, or it makes me sound like I'm saying this so that someone will say, "Oh, but you're so generous," But you and I had a conversation about our greatest strengths being our greatest weaknesses, and I think one of my strengths is that I am pretty decisive. I have a lot of opinions. I'm pretty clear about them. I can have sort of a cold, clinical, hard look at things. Robert calls me cold-hearted in the nicest possible way, in an affectionate way. He calls me cold-hearted. So that makes it so that I can say, I'm not going to give my energy to this because I can't. I have this opinion and I sort of close out other things. And so that's my strength, but it also means I recognize that I'm not as open as I could be, or as I sometimes want to be.
Right.
And so that's...
I remember that we had that conversation in the car on the way to Told. I think what I had said to you, my greatest strength is also my greatest weakness, which is I'm accommodating. So, and we were laughing about that's why we're friends, is because you're controlling and I'm accommodating.
That's right.
But being very accommodating is nice. But then being very accommodating can get me into big trouble too, where I get overextended and I get taken advantage of and I'm used, right? And I think what we had said is that how it shows up as your greatest strength is that you're not bothered by other people's opinions of you either. And that you never, in fact, so much so that you don't even notice how people might be reacting to you. Yeah. And this was also the context of like the dog, right? I was always sort of aware of what people were looking at, how they were looking at me with the dog, and you never even noticed that kind of stuff. You're not bothered by other people's opinion of you. And also we were talking about in the context of Robert's socks and how he keeps talking about how they don't fit.
Right. I forgot about this. Yes.
And you were like, you don't care. I mean, that they don't fit. Not that you don't care about Robert and not that you don't care that the socks don't fit. You're like, oh, they don't fit. Okay, well, next time I'll figure something else out.
Right.
But the flip, so the thing is you don't have a lot of empathy for him.
Yeah.
Because they're just socks.
Right, exactly.
You now have information, you have good information that you'll take for the next pair of socks. Mm-hmm. Now, the downside of that is you don't have empathy for him and that his socks don't fit. Right? You don't care that his socks don't fit.
Right. Yeah, it doesn't bother me. It's not like, oh, I worked so hard and now he doesn't like his socks. I mean, he likes them fine, but yeah, that doesn't bother me.
We're kind of joking about this. Mm-hmm. This is like an example of something where it can be, you not having empathy means that you're not bothered by things.
Right.
That his socks don't fit and that he keeps bringing up the fact that his socks don't fit because in the car they were brought up again. Times I think that we're laughing. We love Robert. He was not saying anything negative about the socks, but
just to be clear, the only part that doesn't fit is that they fall down. The foot part fits fine.
Yes, he kept saying, "I love the foot." He kept bringing up how much he likes the foot, but the ankle part doesn't fit.
The legs fall down. And I told him that in the Civil War they probably wore garters.
Guess what he's getting for Christmas?
Right, sock garters. Oh my goodness,
so funny. But yeah, so this is all just in the context of generous of spirit, because I know you're not saying this because you want to have people say, oh, Kelly, you're so nice and so generous. That's not what it's about. It's also, I would say the same thing about me too. Like I would read things that people would say. Now we're going back to the election, and my first thought was, "Well, what an idiot!" Like, that's all I could think to myself, and I had to stop and say, "No, everybody has a different life experience,
right?
A different perspective. We don't know what this person is going through. We don't know,
right?
And so it's not fair of us to label, and it's not fair of them to label us either, because they don't know." So I think I understand what you're saying about generosity of spirit.
Yeah, just having a little more empathy, I think, is another good way to think about it. Just kind of try to think about what it's like for other people. Yeah, yeah, because that's not my. It's not my first thought. It's not my nature to worry about how other people are doing. That sounds terrible. I live inside my own head, I live inside my own head, and to make myself go outside of my own head and think about what's in someone else's is a little bit of a challenge. Anyway, it's my challenge for 2017.
So we've talked about this before, so this is not new in you, so one of my challenges or my goal or the thing that I want to accomplish this year is just the opposite of yours, is I want to be more selfish of spirit.
Good for you, Marsha.
Woohoo! I think that, as I said, my one of my greatest qualities is that I'm accommodating, and it's also my worst quality, is it gets me into trouble, and I want to work more towards saying no to people, because being so accommodating can get me into big trouble a lot, and it means I'm extended beyond what I can I'm able to give. And then it makes me tired. It makes me sick. It makes me sad. It makes me depressed. It makes me angry and makes me resentful.
It makes you hysterical.
And so it makes me hysterical.
Inside your head.
In my head. Yes.
Yeah.
And so I'm going to work towards now, in terms of being understanding of people and being empathetic of people. That will probably never change. But I just what I want to do for this year is just to put myself first. And start taking care of myself. That's what I want to do. And I have to tell listeners, too, that this year has been a difficult year for me. There's been a lot going on. The big thing that happened in my life is that I filed for divorce, and my divorce was final on December 29th. And it's been a long, long process. It's been exhausting. And also, as people know, I'm caring for my mother who just turned 91 on Tuesday. In the middle of all of this, we moved her to an assisted living facility. And even though it says it's assisted living, I'm over there almost every day. I'm there 5 days a week. Bathing, doctor's appointments, physical therapy, making her eat, doing her laundry, plus just spending time with her. So I have to say I'm exhausted. And in terms of how it comes back to being sort of selfish is I find as I'm trying to find ways to, with all of this that's going on, to find time for myself. It's difficult to care for an aging parent, even if they are in assisted living. So one of my goals for this year is to find out how I can sort of live my life as the truth is her life is ending. We're beginning the slow process to the end of her life. And so how do I keep living while I support her towards the end of her life? And I'm not sure how I do that. But that's one of the things I'm struggling with, how I do that. Also, with and you brought up this idea of being, hysterical in my mind. With all of this year of the divorce, and the care of my mother has been going on. Kelly, when did things start going south for us with my mother and dementia? It was
probably 2 years ago.
It's more that we noticed it it was the cruise through the Panama Canal.
So longer than that.
The big cruise for my mom. So I think that was 2012.
Okay.
I think.
Oh, gosh.
That's when we noticed.
Yeah.
And it was before that we noticed things were a little odd, but that was when we really noticed, okay, there's something really going on. Mm-hmm. And so we tried to care for her as much as we possibly could in her home and couldn't do it anymore. With the care of my mom, the divorce, the care of Ben, and his challenges he had at school, which I'm grateful that he's doing really well now. All of this has made me feel like I'm in a constant state of hysteria in my brain. And if you meet me, people meet me, I always think I'm calm. I am not calm. I am hysterical 24/7 in my brain. That's how it feels.
I shouldn't be laughing, but it is
I'm laughing
too. You
too.
have a very calm outward persona.
But there's some days I wake up and I feel I'm hysterical. I do. I wake up some mornings and I feel like I'm completely hysterical inside my brain and I have to just calm down. So that's what I'm hoping for this year. Now that the divorce is done, I'm still a little, in the hysteria because I'm doing all the name change stuff. I'm going back to my birth name. That is a nightmare in itself, doing that, because it's also, I didn't think about, if I had thought this through, I didn't think about that I'm on all of my mother's accounts and I have durable power of attorney all with my married name. So it's very different than when I got married, where I just had to change a social security card, a driver's license, and a checking account. It's much more now.
Yeah.
So that's been kind of a challenge, but that will be done. I just have to get through that, and that'll be done. And then I really want to focus just on calming my life down. Mm-hmm. Just be calm. Take a deep breath and just calm down. Mm-hmm. And I find over the last year, I have been knitting. But the entire month of December, I don't think I picked up my knitting at all, really. I would do a little bit. Yeah. It was a challenge to get that pussy hat done. Mm-hmm. I'm trying, this coming year, I want to find a way to get back to what was pleasurable about life, mm-hmm. friends, cooking, gardening. Kelly, this summer I planted a vegetable garden, and I spent the money buying the plants. I put it in, and I never watered it or weeded it or did a thing to it because I could not make myself go out there. And I want to, this year is going to be about going back to all those things that give me pleasure.
Yeah.
Gardening, cooking, knitting. Saying
no, maybe even to yourself about some of those things. Because you have a lot of interests. I know I've been in the position. Yeah. I have a lot of interests, and sometimes I just have to say, okay, this particular thing is not happening right now.
Yeah.
And so, you gave yourself permission, or maybe it just happened to you, but you gave yourself permission. You said no to yourself about gardening. The vegetable garden was just a big no.
Yeah, I put it in, and then I think, maybe I watered it once, and then I thought, this is just not happening.
Yeah.
It's just not happening this year. And the dog, too. The other thing, too, is that I had high hopes for dog training, and I just gave up. I couldn't do it during this period of time. So, I started back. We've gone to 2 classes, because that's the other thing is this dog has been a godsend for this year. Enzo came into our lives, and it's been great. He's been so much fun, so positive, and, you have to go out and walk the dog every day. I try to. I didn't today, I admit. But, it's been really good for Ben, too, to have Enzo. So, so those are my goals. Just, create some calmness and not be so hysterical all the time in my head, and be a bit more selfish of spirit.
Yeah. I think that's good. Good.
Yeah. And I think for you, it's going to be really good to also practice being more generous of spirit.
I'm doing well so far.
Keep trying. Well, so here's the thing. So one of the things I had thought to myself is to practice saying no, is I need to say no once a day. So is there something you can think that you can do every day to a little thing that you can do every day that encourages this sort of generosity of spirit?
Yeah, actually, well, I already talked about the 10 and 100. That's not every day.
Right.
But the 10 and 100. But the other thing that I've been working out in my head is with my students. I love teaching, and I love my students. I mean, I just have the best time doing this job. But sometimes when you get so busy, I notice that I'm not really present. I'm not really there. My mind is thinking about something else that I have to do when students are talking to me. Not always. That makes me sound like I'm never listening. And I don't mean to say that, but I do notice, there are times when a student is talking to me and I'm just not focused completely on that student. And so one of the things that I've been trying to do in classes is if a student needs to talk to me after class or talk to me before class or catches me in the hallway, even though I'm on my way somewhere else or I'm, off to do something else or I was already thinking, I was deep in thought about something else, is to just put that off and really just listen and try to ask questions. As you know, I don't always ask people questions. I don't get into conversations like with people the way Marsha does. Marsha can ask one question and there goes the whole conversation in directions that she never imagined. And so, doing that kind of thing. And so that's something that I can do every day, make that connection with a student who has a question, who's come to talk to me about something, or who maybe I just happen to see outside of class and really pay attention to what they're saying, what they're talking about, and maybe even what they're not, trying to, understand what they're not saying. So that's not very specific. It's not like I'm going to do this many times every day. Yeah. But it is something that one of the ways that I've thought about doing this.
Good. Well.
So have you said no today?
Let me think.
You need me to ask you for something?
Oh, I'm called on the carpet now. Let me think. Well, this doesn't really count. No, this doesn't count. My brother called me. He's having a party on Saturday that he wanted me to come to. Like he always wants me to come because I do all the cooking. And I did tell him. So this is a couple weeks ago. I told him no, I'm not. I'm not going to the party. Actually, Kim, who people know from the podcast, and we're going out to dinner on Saturday. But he did ask me to make a pound cake because he's going to make a trifle. I did tell him I make it the pound cake. But I told him, no, I can't do it today.
That counts. That counts.
Okay. But the big no is I'm not going to the party. Every year they have a Burns night party to celebrate Robert Burns, the Scottish poet. I don't know if it's his birthday or his death. I can't remember. But anyway, it's a big Scottish thing. But it's not really my party. It's a party that my brother has with his friends. They're all into the bagpipes and kilts, and it's a chance to wear kilts, and it's a chance to eat haggis. And it's not that I hate haggis, it's not like I wait all year going, oh, I can't wait for Burns night to have that haggis. So it's not really my party, it's really my brother's party and his friend Gary, who people know from the podcast too. It's really their party, and they invite all of their friends. So Kim and I decided, well, we're just going to go out to dinner that night.
Yeah.
And, so I did say no. That's the big no. Okay. I'm not cooking for the party, but I am going to make the pound cake for the trifle. So,
well, you like to bake.
Yeah, I like to bake. So I'm going to do that. I told him I think I'm going to do that tonight. So yeah, I think have I really said no today?
I didn't mean to put you on the spot. You did say you were going to do it every day. Maybe you should make it less frequent. Okay, you should start slower.
Okay, I'm going to check the time. It's 5:00. The night's not over.
True. That is true.
So I think the only person I can say it to now is Ben. So he doesn't know it, but he's going to get a no. Poor thing.
Yeah, really.
Okay, sorry, Ben. No dinner for you tonight.
Oh, my goodness.
Anyway, maybe it'll be no, I'm not cooking. We're going out.
There you go.
There, that's a good one. Okay. Anyway. Okay. Well, so next podcast, I think we'll get back to knitting.
Yes. We'll definitely have some things. I'm hoping to get some of these old projects put to bed so that I can start some new things, because I have some ideas of things I want to do. So.
Well, I did too, because I've been really looking at patterns for, the yarn that I bought when you were here. I shouldn't talk about this because I can't remember. It's the Queensland
the
llama
cotton, soft cotton llama or something.
Something like that I bought at Quintessential Knits. I've been looking at something to make with that.
Well, and I had a question from a listener, Susan, from the plying episode, and I do want to answer her question, and I want to also talk a little bit more about plying, because I have that magazine article. Well, it's actually a whole issue of Ply Magazine that was all dedicated to plying. So I thought I would read through that and then kind of update in the next episode. Maybe I'll update what I talked about with respect to plying. Okay. So yeah, but I did not have time to read this week with school starting. I should be getting into a more regular routine between now and the next podcast.
All right.
Okay.
Well, okay. All right. So we'll talk in 2 weeks.
Yes.
Get knitting.
You too.
All righty. Bye.
Thank you so much for listening. To subscribe to the podcast, visit 2usfiberadventures.com. We have links for iTunes, Google Play Music, YouTube, and others.
Join us on our adventures on Ravelry and Instagram. I am Better in Motion, and Kelly is 100 Projects.
Until next time, we're the 2Us
doing our part for World Fleece. Oh, I can't wait for Burns night to have that haggis.